Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi everyone, and welcome to Room by Room, the home organisation Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element, with expert knowledge from professionals in the field. I'm your host, Gabriella coming to you from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about plumbing, its importance and maintenance with Kim Worsham, who is a water and sanitation specialist and a toilet historian. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So before we get into our topic and learn more about toilets and plumbing, can you introduce us yourself to us so we can learn more about you?
Sure, yeah. So as you said, my name is Kim Worsham. I am a water and sanitation specialist, which means that I'm typically traveling all over the place in the U.S. and overseas to help communities get safe access to clean drinking water and safe toilets. I also own and run a company called FLUSH, which is an educational and consulting company, essentially. And I've been doing this for, probably about 15 years now. It's been a while talking about toilets.
And you haven't run out of things to talk about yet?
No, much to my partner's demise. I think he might be getting tired of toilet talk, but it just keeps going. It's like the little engine that just doesn't stop.
And you know what? It's always going to be important. So at least you'll always have a job.
There you go.
So we're going to do a section that we call Have You Met Kimberly? And that's where we find out a bit more about you. So our first question is, what's your favorite book?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I read a lot and I think my tastes change a little bit all the time. So I would say right now, my favorite book might be a series by N.K. Jemisin called the Broken Earth series. It's just fascinating. I feel like I've never read a book before that's so full of plot twists that I can't anticipate. But it's kind of like a dystopian fantasy book, and it has a lot of really interesting social commentaries.
Yeah, I read that myself, and not often do books get a second reading, but it's on my list of another series I have to read through because I think it'll just get better, actually.
Every time. I mean, like when I was reading it, I literally would turn the page and go, oh, and my partner would be like, what? I'm like, I just didn't expect that. So I thought that was you don't get that a lot, right? When you're reading books, or at least for me, I've been around long enough to read a lot of books. So now it's like, and in 5 pages, this is going to happen. There it is. And this one, I genuinely didn't know was going to happen.
Yeah, I've read quite a lot of fantasy, and I read one and I was just like, I feel like I've read this 3 times already. I can't read this.
Yeah.
And I never had that with N.K. Jemisin's books.
No, none of them. Even her other series that are older, they're just always so surprising. It's great.
Yes, they're very good. And what about a movie you've enjoyed recently?
Yeah. So recently, I've been on a lot of airplanes, so I can't remember all the movies I've watched. But I actually enjoyed this really weird hour-long French movie. I can't remember the title of it in French, but in English, it's strange, but it's true. And it's about a couple that has a tunnel in their house that takes you back a few minutes in time every day. And it's just one of those like wild French movies where it just gets to be so ridiculous that you can't stop watching it. But then when it's over, you're like, why did I just watch that? So I think I enjoyed it because at the end I was just like, wow, I mean, what can I watch on this 11-hour flight that's going to get better than that? I don't know.
I don't know about you, but on flights, I start with the most intellectual movie and then I sort of downgrade from there into like kids movies.
Yeah. Moana is definitely a go-to for me on airplanes, and it makes me cry every time on planes. So I don't know why I do it to myself, but it's definitely but that like frequent.
Yeah, that awkward crying on the plane where you're like trying not to let anyone else know.
Yeah. And especially when there's like the gulping tears that happen in the middle and your person next to you, especially if you're wearing a mask and they're just like, are you okay? And it's just, was that just Moana's grandmother? Okay.
Yeah. I will probably not watch that on the plane just in case. Don't do it. Yeah. And do you listen to any podcasts?
I'm going to be honest, I'm more of an audiobook listener. So I used to listen to a lot of podcasts and then I transitioned to audiobooks and I haven't been able to get out of it. But when I was into podcast world, I listened to a lot of, I'm trying to remember the names now. I don't remember what they're called. A bunch of other podcasts. Don't worry about their names. They're popular. Yeah.
Well, what about the audiobooks that you listen to?
Yeah. So I listen to, again, a lot of a young adult, actually, because I think it's delightful to listen to, especially if it's really long. But I actually just finished The Tao of Pooh on audiobook. And it was a book I couldn't finish reading. I didn't enjoy reading it, but I enjoyed listening to it because the person who read it did all of the voices. So I felt like I could get behind it a little better than just reading. So I just finished that. I also, I've listened to a couple really interesting linguistic books, or not even books, they're great courses by this linguist master guy, McCormack at Columbia University. And he's hilarious. So it kind of sounds like a podcast while he's explaining to you like the history of language evolution in sub-Saharan Africa. It's just fascinating. So I've been really enjoying that kind of stuff.
And I think that would really benefit from the audio aspect as well.
Yeah, because he can do the actual, like, clicking languages are really hard to read, but he actually does it for you. And so you can hear it. You can, as he is explaining evolution, you can hear him transitioning the way he's talking, which is really cool too. Oh,
that's really cool. I'm going to find that and listen to that. And do you have a role model?
I have tons. So it's like one of those questions where I'm like, yes, of course. But I think one of the things for me is I kind of cherry pick my role models for little different ways in my life. So, I have a role model in terms of how I write emails. It's from one of my old bosses at one of my old jobs. I have a role model for how I try to handle, outsourcing all of my work, which is a colleague I had a long time ago who was like, outsource everything. And then I have role models in life, of course. I think Thich Nhat Hanh's Buddhist trainings and teachings are definitely things I try to aspire to adopt. So there's a lot of that kind of different pieces. So like, yes, I have role models.
Yep. Too many to name.
Yeah. How do you cobble it all together to make a human being? It's me.
Perfect. I mean, don't you want to be made up of all the best bits of everyone else?
Yeah. And I've also like had a hard time thinking that like I'd ever want to be someone else. You know what I mean? Like I like everyone else, but I really do think I'm kind of cool. Like I like myself enough. And I think I've gotten to that age where like I'm not, I'm like, yeah, I get me. I like me. Fine. And then if I see someone who's doing something cool, I'm like, oh, I'll take that pit. Yes, thank you. I will incorporate that. But otherwise, I'm like, yeah, this is me. I'm like, cool. I'm good.
Yeah, that's a good way to think. I think, be yourself, and also just steal bits from other people that are good as well.
Upgrades. They're like little upgrades.
Yeah. And what about a course? Has there been a course that's inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of courses in my life so far. And I mean, there was actually a course in my first master's degree. I have two, which is, I don't recommend anyone to do, but I have two. The first one I did, it was a public administration master's. And one of the classes was, again, this Buddhist guy who was taking Buddhist practices and applying it to policy work. And I thought that was really interesting, and it kind of opened my eyes. I was quite young when I took it, and it opened my eyes to kind of understand you didn't have to do the things the way that we're trained to do all the time. You can bring things in from other worlds and it's okay. And I've definitely inspired me to try to keep doing that in my work. So even with like the sanitation work I do, sometimes I'll be like, oh, what do they do over here? And that looks cool. Can we bring that in somehow? And so people are always like, where are you coming up with these ideas? And it's usually, I'm not thinking of new ideas. I'm just trying to copy and paste things from other places. But I think that that's a really interesting and an inspiring thing to do. Sometimes you get cool things out of it.
And that's the same as what you said with your role models, where you're taking things from other places and things that work and incorporating them into what you're doing now.
Yes, I think my mom used to call it being a dabbler. Professional dabbler.
Perfect. So how do you define home organization?
It's interesting. So I live in the US, and in the US, we used to have these classes in high school called home economics. So when I think of home organization, I think of that. And that basically, that class had, the structure, planning of keeping your house in order with everyday things, from cooking to finances to fixing small appliances, stuff like that. So when I think of home organization, I think of that. I'm not sure if that's what you mean by home organization, but that's what I mean by it.
I mean, I think that we're looking to find out how lots of different people see home organization. So, yeah, like
here we are.
Yes, learning something new.
Yes.
And are there any misconceptions about home organization?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think one of the big ones that's definitely in the news a lot more recently in the last couple of years is that I think people conceive that home organization is a gendered role, or that there are gendered roles in home organization, but it doesn't have to be that way. And especially if you live home alone, there is no gender norm to apply, right? You live by yourself, and so you're doing all the things. But I mean, my partner is a man and I'm a woman, and honestly, he's better at a lot of the perceived female roles in home organization than I am by far. I take out the trash and he does the cooking, if you know what I'm saying. But I think that that's a misconception that kind of limits us when we think about what we can do at home.
I really like what you say about single person homes. You are the person living there. It's not gendered, because otherwise you just live in a mess of a home, I guess.
Yeah. And I've been to those homes and I don't like them. I don't like being in them. I don't want to. And then it's like one of those things too. It's like if someone's not taking care, organizing their home, then the question is, what else are they not organizing? You know what I mean? So it kind of has that snowball effect almost, where it's like, okay, well, what are you not doing? If you're not taking care of your home, what are you not doing otherwise?
Yes, that's a good question.
It's a dark question.
So you did mention that your definition of home organization includes like maintenance and looking after the place. So what is plumbing?
Yeah, so, that's a big question. So plumbing, I mean, the simple one sentence term is, plumbing is any pipe work that exists that includes some kind of water in it. Now, or some kind of water in different forms, right? It's essentially, plumbing is the business of managing pipes that bring clean water to your home, dirty and yucky water out of it, and also the water that becomes steam and turns into air bits coming in and out of your home. And, in ancient times, or like in older times, plumbing was like all piping in the system, all of it. And nowadays, when we think about plumbing, we typically think of things related to the piping in the home up to the sidewalk. And then like anything beyond that becomes kind of an engineering thing, where there are like plumbers that are managing things with the cities or municipalities. But it kind of sometimes feels a little separate out. Like it's the same kind of thing, but I think a lot of people now think of plumbing as solely what's happening in the building in and around their house as well.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of, I guess I feel like I think of sewers and plumbing as two separate things, or like water mains as separate from what we have in the home, but they do connect to each other, presumably. I hope so.
I mean, they shouldn't connect to each other, but they're connected.
I mean,
water. We don't want that.
In the sense that the home is connected to the water mains, and then the home is also connected to the sewer pipes.
Right. Yes.
In some way.
And if you think about it, so like the term plumbing, it comes from the word plumbum, which is iron or lead. Lead is lead. PB is lead, right? So in the Roman times, they used the word plumbing for the pipes that they were putting underground to move water either into the house or out of the house. So that's where the term comes from. And I mean, and the other thing to note is like originally plumbing was really more of like an urban thing. Even in like ancient Rome, it was thing, you had piping where people lived in density, but now we really think of plumbing as like where water is. So even if you have a septic tank at home, it's still plumbing because there's water involved. And now it also includes a whole other range of stuff, not just piping, right? So like plumbing now also includes like rainwater harvesting systems, like gas piping plumbers sometimes have to deal with because it's like water, it's not water, but it's liquidy. Gray water systems, septic systems, drainage venting, steam systems, like all of that now is under the same bucket. So if you're a plumber, you have to deal with all of those things.
And you mentioned as well steam. Where is steam coming from?
Okay. So, I mean, some HVAC systems, right, have steam as part of their heating. Like if you want hot air, you know, I know in Australia you don't necessarily have to deal with that so much, but in colder places, you might use steam as a way to heat. So, say in New York City, which is where I'm kind of originally from, they have a whole network of steam pipes in New York City to heat the city's building. So that is a plumber's job, is to deal with that. And if you work at some kind of manufacturing facilities, because they might have like a cooling system to you know, they use water to cool off the factory machines. So they might have a steam system as well.
And that's included in plumbing?
Yeah, because steam's water, right? It's just vapor water.
Makes sense. I guess I never put two and two together.
Yeah, it's like a big field. Everyone thinks it's like sewers, and it's like, it's so much more.
And we're learning about it today.
Yes, indeed.
So why is plumbing important?
Well, plumbing is important primarily because it helps us keep our drinking water and our waste separate, which means that plumbing helps prevent us from getting sick because our clean drinking water is not mingling with our. So without plumbing, if we were to simply go to the bathroom, it would go into the waterways. No matter where you are, even if you are in a place that doesn't have a lot of water, without toilets and without plumbing systems, it's going to go into the waterways somewhere. So even if you have like a dry toilet, like a compost toilet at home, you still have water systems. And if you didn't take care of those things, the dirty stuff would still end up somewhere in a waterway. You wouldn't want it. And we'd all get very sick very quickly. And also dealing with the material in these pipes is a very dangerous job. So it's really important because we're literally trying to basically keep us from dying because of waste that's hazardous, like our human waste, but also like if you have hazardous chemical waste, that kind of plumbing stuff, you want it to be removed, right? And there's also all of these gases that come from our waste. So say from like our human waste that goes into the toilet, our poo, it generates gases like hydrogen sulfide and methane, and that stuff is flammable and toxic. It will kill you if you get too much of it. So plumbing is also trying to make sure that all of those gases that could hurt us from all of these water things don't asphyxiate us, essentially, and don't cause us to die. And also make sure that they don't leak into environmental places or into our homes. So plumbing is like this really big thing. And it's basically this unsung hero keeping us alive every day without us really having to think about it, because the people who do a good job at it make it look easy and we don't get sick. So we think that everything's working and we forget it ain't bit.
Yeah, I never thought about plumbing until, well, I never thought about anything about my toilet or my plumbing or anything until it didn't work. And then I was like, how do I fix this? I don't know how to do any of this. But that's a topic for another day.
I mean, it's kind of related. I mean, plumbing is, if your toilet doesn't work, there could be a plumbing issue. So
yeah. Well, yeah. So that's basically what happened. Was there was a blockage in the toilet, and we had no way to fix it. I also had COVID, so I couldn't leave the home or have anyone come in the home.
Oh no! I hope you had a solution.
So we got a friend to go and get a. I forgot what they're called. You know the sticks with the you use to unclog toilets?
An ogre.
An ogre?
Yeah, sorry. A-U-G-E-R or R-E, I guess.
Maybe like with the cup on the end.
Yeah, where you have like a little spindy thing that you like twist it around and it just kind of pushes things down.
No, we didn't have that. The other one, the stick with the cup
plunger?
on the end. The plunger, that's one.
Well, okay, there you go.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, we didn't have one of those.
I'm sorry.
Do I
have
okay.
an ogre?
Yes.
But you don't mean.
Well, hopefully we won't have this problem again. So I had to get my friend to actually run to the store and bring it to us and leave it at our door.
Nice.
So we got it fixed eventually, but it was very scary because we were like, what are we going to do for 2 days or 3 days, however long it took us to get out of quarantine?
Oh, man.
Yeah. But other than that, what are some other problems?
I mean, I think leaks and clogs are really like the big problems when it comes to plumbing in whatever system you have. And I think so like when we're talking with actual systems itself, those are the problems that happen because either people treat their drainage, their piping systems like garbage, literally, like we put stuff down drains that we shouldn't. People put all kinds of crazy things down the drain and you should, there's not much you should put in drains. So, but people do. So that will break drains over time, either clogging them or causing them to eventually start to leak. So there's those kinds of problems, but also nature can cause plumbing issues. So especially in really old systems, like in the US, we have very old plumbing systems now with the sewers. And things like tree roots will sometimes break into the plumbing pipe and cause leaks because the tree roots they're tenacious and they will get in there and they will just start to break down those piping systems. Or even, I mean, earthquakes and tectonic plates, right, can also cause leaks. So those are some major problems. When we think about what kind of problems or challenges we have in plumbing in a societal way, well, one of the big ones is that we are kind of running out of plumbers in a lot of places. They're aging out. And one of the, at least in the US, I know this is definitely a problem, and I'm pretty sure it's not just here, but people are aging out of plumbing. And there was this like period of time where manual jobs or, jobs that don't require college degrees were kind of denigrated. So a lot of people didn't go to study and get those jobs. So now what's happening is we have less and less people to do that work, even though it's just as important, if not more important now, because we have more people. And so, you would think you would have a growing number of plumbers over time because the population grows, right? And you kind of would expect that you'd have this ratio, but that's not happening right now. So, some of it is because people think it's a lowly job, and some people because they think a certain kind of person needs to be a plumber. And let me tell you, it is a good paying job. If anyone out there is young, has time to become a plumber, you get some mad money being a plumber nowadays. So just hot tip.
Okay. Solve our plumbing problems by becoming a plumber.
Yes.
And so you also mentioned, you mentioned leaks and clogs. What can we as owners of toilets and owners of plumbing, what can we do about these?
Yeah. So the first thing is prevention, right? It's not putting weird things down our drains. And I'm not just talking toilets here. I'm talking shower drains. I'm talking sinks. I'm talking stormwater drains that are on your street. So there's only really 3 things that can go into your pipes. In Australia, in the US, in Europe, in other countries it's less. But the 3 things is water of some type, whether it's clean or dirty, bodily fluids, and toilet paper. In some countries, not even toilet paper. But essentially, that's the only stuff we should put down the drains. We should not put floss and hair. We shouldn't put medicines down the drain. We shouldn't put wet wipes. Should absolutely not go down the drain. Also, I'm of the camp that we shouldn't be necessarily putting our food scraps down the drain, because that stuff can help clog pipes over time, especially if there's butter bits or greasy bits. That stuff will often turn into things called fatbergs, which is literally a berg of fat. It's gross, and it's the technical term for it, apparently. You get these giant bergs of fat that clog sewers up, and then all of a sudden you'll have a sewage spill, or the sewage backs up into your house, and it's because you put something down the drain you shouldn't have a long time ago. So that's like one of the biggest thing you can do to make sure that your pipes function. Another thing I recommend, and what I've heard from other plumbers, is do your best to not use Drano or all of those other like pipe emptying stuff out, because what they do is they heat up the pipes, and the idea is they're heating up the pipes to expand them so things get loosened and they will drop down. But that over time, especially if you do it too much, will actually make your pipes quite brittle, and they will start to leak or break over time if you do it too much. So, use with great caution, and only in the very rare cases where you can't pull things out. So there's a lot of like human error related to the issues we have that we can prevent. And then the other thing is, if there's something that's like bigger than your toilet running, or you needed to like reinstall a toilet or a sink, hire a plumber. Just if you think you can try to fix it, maybe when in doubt, hire a plumber to do it. It's just
okay.
There's a lot of reasons why most humans should not be trying to fix plumbing issues that go beyond their house. And even the stuff in your house, if it's between the walls, maybe you shouldn't be dealing with it if it's in a pipe. I like to think of it as, if it's something that you're actively using, like a toilet or a sink or a shower, you can do that. But if it's anything that looks like a pipe and it's not something you're necessarily going to like decorate for your friends to see at home, let the plumbers deal with that, because there's dangerous stuff. You don't want the scalding hot water to hurt you in the hot water pipe. You don't want the sewage to leak onto you, or you don't want to participate in making it leak, right? Or you don't want water everywhere, especially if you're in a place with drought. Plumbers have to get at least 5 years of training before they can really do their work. So they are heavily trained. They have to be, at least in the US, and I'm pretty sure in Australia, they have to be licensed to do their job. They have to take a test, and in some countries that's a 3-day test, and it includes like theory and practice, and you get graded. And there's usually apprenticeships you have to do to get to the licensing. It's a very rigorous thing. But that's because you are dealing with so many different kinds of pipes, and you have to make sure you don't mess it up. That was a long answer to your question, and it went a bit further than you probably wanted, but
that's okay.
It's really important to just kind of make sure everyone sees that this is like a big thing. It's not just a pipe.
I'm glad you talked about it, actually, because something that I sometimes wonder is, sometimes something happens like, with the toilet that was clogged. Sometimes I wonder if I should know how to fix these things, and even things that are not related to plumbing. So part of why I'm here actually is because I want to learn how to do these things. But sometimes we need to be told. leave it to the professionals, because sometimes the professionals do know best.
Yeah. I know at least in California where I live, the amount of plumbing that I'm legally allowed to do in my house is anything under $500. So there's like a financial amount. Anything that would cost more than that, I have to get a plumber or else it becomes not legal. So because again, it's heavy duty stuff, and it's not just that you're dealing, when you deal with pipes in general, it's usually that you're not just dealing with your own pipe. There's usually other people's pipes attached to it. If you live in an apartment, that's far more complicated because you've got this grid of pipes from all of these different apartment complexes or flats. And then in houses, you're also dealing with not understanding necessarily how each house is connected. So it's wanting to make sure that, like, if you're going to do work, it really should be the stuff that's like fixtures, appliances. Fixtures and appliances, fine. But there comes a point where, like, I know, I used to live in Australia, and, there's this thing as well. It looks slightly different than here sometimes. But there's like a red water pipe screw that you can close and open the valves. Basically, anything beyond that valve really should go to the plumber, because they're the ones that know how to deal with those. So your toilet, fine. You should know, learn how to unclog your toilet, learn how to fix it when it's starting to, run all the time, if that's something that's happening, or if you're having issues with like the water coming in. And you can see that there's a fixture you can get at the hardware store. Everything else, maybe not do it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good advice. So you did mention, that we should know how to do some of these things. Can you elaborate a little bit on some of the techniques that we should know?
Yeah. So when it comes to, plunging a toilet, that's kind of like the top one people keep on wondering about. So plunging a toilet, the concept of the plunger is you're creating a vacuum. So the idea is that you want to get your plunger in a certain way once after you flush the toilet. So once all of the water has evacuated from your bowl, that's when you put in your plunger, because then you're going to create a seal. And then what you do is you start to pulsate, like you rapidly start pulsating, because you're trying to move, you're hoisting stuff out of your toilet, right? Something got stuck, so you're trying to hoist it up. So using that vacuum to basically kind of like push it up with the vacuum suck is what you're trying to do with the plum. So, or the plunger rather. So that's like one of the big things that people should probably know how to do. It's not that you have to like put your foot on the side of the wall and really get into it. It's really making sure you've got this vacuum. And what that means too is when you put in the plunger, put it in all the way so it's not rounded anymore. It should be so that the stick is kind of going into that bowl part, right? You want it to go in all the way, so then the sucking up part is you slowly pulling it up. Because otherwise you're just going to keep pushing it up or down, and it's just going to kind of get like, it's going to get stuck in the pipe. So that's like one key thing that people should know about. Do you have questions about that before I keep going on my list of things people should know about?
No, I think that is a very good description. I think I was doing it all wrong, but I guess it worked out okay. Probably next time it'll be a lot easier.
Well, at the end of the day, if you get it done and it works somehow, fine. This is the way that they recommend to do it, to make it just a little faster, so you don't have to put as much tears into it, if you will.
Yeah. No, that's all of my questions. So what else should we know?
Another one that I think is really interesting, a lot of people don't seem to know, is how to stop your toilet from running. So when a toilet is running, what it means typically is that so in the toilet tank, and this is going to be hard in some places where you don't actually have access to your toilet bowl. So at least in the US, and when I lived in Australia, this was also the case, you have access to the toilet bowl. In Europe, maybe not so much. In Europe and in Australia and the US, you can. So what you do is you want to open up that toilet tank lid, because what's happening if it's running is that it usually means something is making the flap that opens and closes the water from your toilet tank from fully closing. Either something's in the way, maybe the chain got in the way, which is usually a pretty easy one to fix, or it could be that you have an old flap and it's just not doing the job anymore. Sometimes what's also happening is that ball that you might have in your toilet that goes up and down, especially if it's an older toilet. Sometimes what's going on is that it's not quite going up enough. And maybe that means that you have the water isn't coming in enough. So there could be a bit of like a water issue where you need to probably call a plumber about that one. But if there's like an issue where there's just not enough water coming in, or maybe there's like everyone's using water at the minute and maybe it's just not coming in fast enough because everyone else is taking on the water and it's coming slowly. But for the most part, it's usually going to be that little flapper is just not able to close. And so that's really easy to fix. That's something that people can go, you can go get a flapper, I don't remember the technical term for it right now, but there's a little flapper. You can get it at the home, like at a home hardware store. So you can do that. Sometimes, honestly, it's literally opening up the lid and just like removing whatever is getting in the way to close the flap. And then it stops you from running. It saves you water, but it also just means that your toilet will work better when you flush it next. So that's like one of the really big things that I'm always surprised. Like I go to friends' houses sometimes and I can hear their toilet running and I'll like go into their house or their bathroom and I'll go fix their toilet because I know how to do it. And then you wash your hands afterwards and it's no big deal. So that's like another one I think everyone should probably know.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good one because at my work, a different work, my old job, we had a toilet that ran for like months. And
oh my,
just no one, I think we asked them to fix it and they were like, oh, it's not bad enough that we need to call the plumber. So they just didn't fix it.
Oh no.
And then eventually it got worse and they did fix it. But
it's such an easy fix.
Well, had I known, I probably would have done something about it. I would just been like, well, you know what? I'm just going to have a look.
Yeah.
But it's a bit different, I think, when it's your work toilet or it's a rental or something.
Yes,
you want to be careful. Yeah.
And to be clear, if you're going to replace stuff in the toilet tank, turn off your water before you do that. So the idea is you want to empty it out. You're not going to, replace pieces of your toilet tank with the water in there because everything would float around. It'd be a mess. So if you are going to replace stuff, empty the toilet out. Well, turn off your water, incoming water, empty your toilet out, and then replace things. And then when you're done, turn your water back on. Everything's fine. Just don't try to do it all. It becomes very messy if you try to do it all at the same time. No one likes that.
I can imagine that. Yes. Just a slightly off topic, but you said that some people put crazy things in their toilets or in their drains. What's the craziest thing you've heard?
That I've heard of? Oh boy.
Or that you've seen?
Well, I've heard people. So actually, this is a fun one. I'll make it personal. So, 14 years ago, I was a grad student somewhere and I had a roommate who didn't understand plumbing and she thought it was going to be environmentally friendly to flush pickles down the toilet. So she flushed whole pickles down the toilet and absolutely destroyed our toilet. Like I had to go buy an ogre, which literally like cranks things out of your toilet because she just thought that was the best way to go. She was thinking, I guess, that it would go to the wastewater treatment plant and it would be magically fixed or made into compost or something like that. But it messed up our toilet for like a couple of days. I had to go to a lot of restaurants for going to the bathroom. So that one was like pretty top notch, not good stuff to put down a toilet, I would say. Because also like, cucumbers, I think she thought because cucumbers have the same general shape as you would think of another thing going into your toilet. But the problem is it's not malleable and it's not going to break apart. right? It's not fibrous. Like it's just a big chunk of something.
Yeah.
So like
you really got to bite into it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to like melt in your mouth. So that was a problem. I've had other people I know try to, pour pudding down the drain. I mean, which I guess is kind of okay, but like kind of silly. People have put all kinds of weird stuff. I mean, people have put drugs down toilets and sewer pipes. People have put their goldfish, of course, which is they're never going to survive. They're going to always get destroyed by it.
I'm sorry. I did that as a kid.
Yes. Well, Nemo has been utterly desiccated. So there's that. I've heard some people talking about putting tampons down the drain, which they're really absorbent. Like, don't put pads or tampons or napkins. Like, none of that. All of that stuff's supposed to be absorbent, so it's going to be clogging stuff. So there's that. I've heard some people putting underwear into the toilet. That's stuff that I've heard people do to me, like they've told me, and I'm like, why would you put your, like, just keep it, I don't know, clean it or something,
just put it in the bin.
Yeah, but if you talk to like sewer divers, or if you talk to like wastewater treatment folk, they get even weirder stuff, like guns sometimes, if you live in a country with guns like here. Or sometimes they'll find like bicycle parts that people they won't probably get flushed down the toilet, but they're getting into the sewer somehow. So there's all kinds of wacky stuff that goes into sewer systems.
Okay. So note to self, don't put bicycle parts in the toilet. I've learned
yes. Now. Ideally, no, yes.
So other than like fixing problems that occur and preventing, is there any kind of like maintenance we should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, the maintenance is in the prevention. So don't put stuff down the toilet or down the drains that you don't need to. So what maintenance to me always looks like, having an oil jar if you don't have a compostable system. Like, we have composting where I live, so like all of our oils go to compost, so I don't have to deal with it. But like always, if you finish your meal, wipe your plate clean and put it in the bin it, don't put it down the drain. But also, sometimes you're just going to have to go and fish stuff out of your shower drain. I know I have long hair, and that stuff gets in the drain and it can clog it up, and it's gross, and I know that, but maintenance is sometimes putting on some gloves and like getting really grossed out for about 10 minutes and pulling that stuff up, because it's just, you don't need to always use Drano to do that, and it's not necessarily going to fix the problem. It's just going to push that problem further downstream. So there's maintenance things like that, of course. There's also maintenance stuff you can do, like if you have leaks or if you suspect there are leaks, there are dyes you can buy that you can basically, or you can just buy like blue food coloring dye, right? And if you put that in your toilet tank, or if you put that into your water system, if you think there's a leak somewhere coming from someplace, that's a good way to detect if you actually have a leak, because that blue dye will come in to wherever you think it's going, essentially. So that's a thing that people can do. Also, if you live in a place with older pipes, sometimes it's good to know if your pipes are getting older. So what you can do for your water specifically on the plumbing side is you can do you can buy water quality testing kits, right? You can buy those at the store, you can buy those online, and you can use those sometimes to just check and see if there's heavy metals. If there's heavy metals, it's typically not from your treatment plant. It's typically because your pipes are old. So stuff like that can sometimes help if you can say, hey, I see there's like a high copper buildup in our pipes. Mr. Landlord, maybe it's time to replace them. So there's stuff like that you can do.
And how old is old pipes?
So, I mean, it depends, because it depends on the environment. It depends on the severity of the environment that you live in. when it comes to sewer pipes, they're supposed to have a life of about 100 years. Everything else, like 40 years, you're probably doing really well. If we're talking about like sewers in your home, like the sewer pipes out in your property or your piping, maybe after 10, 20, 30 years, you have someone come and check it out, because over time they will age and they'll move around, and you start seeing things kind of lose their shape or get a little brittle or look a little rusty. And it's just worth having someone check that out. Usually there's like inspector types that can come and do a reading of that stuff before you get anything replaced.
Okay, that sounds good, because my apartment is about 40 years old now. I'll have to check in and see when it was last checked.
Yeah, and some cities in different parts of the world have programs where like they might have a program to help you with that, to assess, first of all, are the pipes, who owns the pipes, right? Like, so is it your landlord? Are you the person that owns the pipes? Where? Or is it the city? So trying to figure out those, because in some places, you know, the sewer pipes that are on your property are yours until they get to the main sewer line. And that stuff is yours, but they might have a program to help you replace it, right? They might do like a buyback program, or they might give you grants, because it costs a lot of money to fix those things. Inside the house too, I mean, hopefully you're not putting a lot of weird stuff down your toilet, in your sink, that like it won't be such a big deal. But like, you know, you do start to see things change over time. Maybe your tap doesn't run as efficiently. Maybe the water's coming in more slowly. Maybe your toilet doesn't drain as quickly. When that stuff starts happening, that's usually when you need to start calling in a plumber to assess, what do we need to fix?
Okay, great to know what to look out for, because I would probably just say, oh, well, that's what's happening.
This is fine.
Yeah. I'm only worried when it starts spouting water everywhere and getting in my electricals. True story.
Maybe before then. Yeah, maybe care before then. That's problematic.
Is there something that I've missed that you wanted to talk about?
In terms of plumbing? Well, I think it's just kind of reiterating the point that plumbers exist for a reason, right? We aren't going to really be able to write them out with DIY. Any good construction company has a plumbing company that they use for all of their work, right? So make sure that you know a plumber you can trust. Like, have a plumber on call, even not on call, but like know who you're going to call and build those relationships, especially if you live in an older house, or if you want to do DIY projects and, you know, upgrade your house. It's good knowing who your plumber is. And just also don't make yourself do something that, if it feels like, if you're looking at it and you're going, I don't really know if I should be doing this. Like, this seems like there could be some danger effects that could happen. Maybe don't do it. I would say, especially because with plumbing, what you're dealing with is stuff that can be quite hazardous or quite dangerous. Err on the side of listen to your gut. If your gut is telling you that this is not something that you should be dealing with, maybe it's not, and call somebody. I like to think of plumbers as like the adults of pipes. So I'm going to go call the pipe adults. Like, the pipe adults know what to do, and they might roll their eyes at something and go like, okay, well, I can charge you a couple $100 for this if you really want me to come fix it. Or they might just go like, lady, use this if it's fine. And I'd rather them tell me that, because they're kind of licensed to know that, than just be like, I'm just going to do some YouTubing and try to see if I can figure this out. Like, it's going to be fine. In some sense, you can do that. But if it doesn't feel safe, don't do it.
And I guess if you've got a plumber who you trust, who you can call and say, is this something I can do on my own? And if they say yes, then, you know, you can go into that comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's a practice that you do in your own home to manage sanitation?
So one of the things that I do is I like to close the lid when I flush. So there's a lot of research that's come out recently in the last couple of months that's showing that if we don't close our lids when we flush the toilet, that stuff aerosols. So whenever you flush the toilet, it will aerosol into the air up to 5 feet, and it'll stay there for several hours. It lingers. So it's actually, now we're starting to ask for questions of, is that how some of the COVID stuff is spreading, is because people haven't closed their toilet lids and it's aerosoling. So that's like one of the big things. It's also a great way to keep your toothbrush safe from those things as well. Close your lid when you flush, if you can. And if you can't, clean everything a lot more, right? So when I've lived in places without a lid, I'll just clean more. I use vinegar to clean the bathroom, not bleach necessarily, just because I think it's very harsh and caustic. It kind of wears down my toilet after a while. And when it comes to managing sanitation at home, I also include hygiene in this. So I always make sure I wash my hands after I go to the bathroom, if I want to eat something, if I worked outside. And there is a way to wash your hands. I'm going to show you. It is, first you do a praying position and you rub them together, and then you move it so like you're putting on a glove, like a lady putting on a long glove, right? The hands are kind of facing back to front, and you wash that way. You do it with the same hand, right? And then you're going to scratch the soap into your nails, on both sides of your nails. And then you're going to clean up your thumb. Clean up both of your thumbs, just like wiggle those guys around. And you're going to just make sure it's getting on every bit of your hand. So that's a really good sanitation tip, because people don't realize, like, doing that thing where you like wash your hands, like where you just do that, it's like, it doesn't do anything. The bacteria is on your fingertips, it's on the back of your hands. So that's how we spread germs. And if we're talking about sanitation at home, I like to make sure my partner doesn't get sick from me, because I work in some very weird places. So I like to keep my hands clean all the time. Other things I do to manage my sanitation at home, I don't use wet wipes. I use a bidet, like a bidet seat. So you can get those toilet seats that have the water hose on it. And I have one of those on all of our toilets so that we don't use wet wipes, so that we can keep ourselves clean and hygienic without using wet wipes, because wet wipes can't go into the toilet. They just go into trash. And so it's just kind of adding trash. So I try to reduce that. There's a couple other things I do, but I feel like that's a pretty solid start when it comes to sanitation in general. And, you know, I don't put stuff down the drain. I don't put food bits down the drain. We have a compost bin for that, including the oils. I will always make sure that the hair that comes out in the shower always goes into the bin so that it doesn't break the sewer pipes eventually. Yeah.
Very good suggestions. One question about putting food in the drain. Something like egg. Can I put egg in the drain? Like a raw egg?
I mean, if you really want, I guess. The point is, we don't want to put too much stuff that can clump. Right? So, and some people will say, sure, put stuff down the drain, whatever, it comes out of your bathroom, out through your bathroom anyways. So like some foods are just going to always kind of like show up. You're always going to see it. Egg yolk is kind of, it's fine because it's not going to be clumpy, right? It kind of breaks down it liquefies. It's when we start talking about like coffee grounds that absorb, right? Tea grounds absorb. Rice, things that can kind of clump up and clog things. That's the stuff you don't want to put down the drain. And I also, like anything that's fibrous, I try to not put down the drain. I mean, because it makes such good compost. Why would I waste it on the sewer system anyways? Because they're not going to do anything with it usually. So I may as well make a compost out of it.
Fair enough. Good to know as well. So we've also got some questions from the audience. So our first question is, can I use boiling hot water to unclog a drain?
I guess. I mean, your drains are built to withstand boiling water, right? So you have boiling water and it goes down drain. It's not like one of the reasons, so sewers in particular have very differently changing temperatures all the time. And part of it is because when we shower, that hot water goes down the drain. So if you want to use boiling water and you try to put it down the drain to unclog it, you go right ahead. The Drano stuff makes it much hotter than that. So that's why we don't want to play with it. And there's not, and like water, you know, putting non-water things down the drain in general just makes things a little weirder, which is why it's like, just don't, Drano's, like it does the foamy thing. It just questions, water's fine. Water's fine. You can go ahead and try that.
Okay. And so this is, I guess, part 2 of the same question. What about baking soda and vinegar?
I guess you can try that. I guess the question is, how much are you putting down there? You know, you don't want to put so much in that you've got this frothy mess of foam. Because again, that stuff is going to get stuck somewhere, and like what happens afterwards. But I mean, if you put some down, okay, it should be okay.
Because I actually saw a video saying that this is something that you should do to keep them clean, is you put a couple tablespoons of baking soda, and then the fizzing action sort of acts as a cleanser.
Sure, you can try that. I don't know what it's cleaning. Like what, and it's again, it's a question of like, what's in your drain? What have you put down the drain that requires it to be cleaned?
Okay, so just don't put things in the drain and you don't need to clean them.
Ideally, you might need to do a little bit of cleaning. Maybe the baking soda thing's fine. I actually don't know.
Okay.
I haven't thought about that one. And most of the countries where I work, that's like not the key issue, if you will. But yeah, I mean, try the baking soda. It's when we start using things that are, you know, made in a lab and have really, like when they do commercials for them, it's really intense music of like, we're going to pound out that glog. Like that's when there's like something where I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's going to damage it. It's not going to help. Baking soda is, you know, a naturally occurring product. So I'm feeling less problematic about it. I just don't know much about what it does.
Okay. So now we'll move on to the open mic. So this is where you get a chance to talk about something that you're passionate about, but it's not necessarily related to our topic. So did you have something that you were thinking about talking about today?
I love talking toilets, so I always have something I can talk about. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about when it comes to toilets is there's so many great and interesting and fascinating even stories about toilets. And we're just not very good at talking about them. And people haven't really bothered to think about telling them very much. So it's kind of my mission to help bring those stories out and make sure that people don't lose them, because I think of toilets and sanitation in general as a cultural phenomenon that is fascinating. We can learn a lot about our culture through toilets, and vice versa. We can learn a lot about our toilets through culture. And so one of those things that I like to do with sanitation and toilets to bring those stories out is I have this thing called toilet tourism that I partake in. And I've kind of semi-made up the term, but it kind of comes, the term toilet tourism comes from somewhere else, but I've kind of made it a thing. And the idea is, you know, when I'm traveling, I will look for things that are really interesting and toilet related. So either it's like a really curious toilet or a toilet with a curious history, or it's a place that's curious that has a toilet attached to it, or maybe it's a toilet museum with toilet art, or something that's interesting related to toilets. And with Flush, I write blogs about this. So when I travel, I've got some very interesting blogs, and I think it's fun because you end up learning how toilets have been a part of history for thousands of years. So I've done one about the oldest toilet in Paris, and it has to do with the 100 Years' War. And I've done a toilet about George Washington's toilet. And it's, we went to a George Washington's, Mount Vernon estate, and it had a toilet. It was an interesting toilet to look at. So I made it a thing where I went to go look at the toilet and observe it and understand it. Or, there are toilet museums I've been to in India. There's one that I've been to somewhere else. I don't remember where the other toilet museum I've been to is, but there's a couple that you can go to. I've been to toilet exhibits in museums that happen once in a while. Or I'll go to, I'll go on these tourist trips and I'll go ask them what the toilets look like. And sometimes they've got the weirdest stories. They're like, oh, actually, it's great you asked because no one's ever asked us this. Or, I have a really good friend in London who runs something called the London Loo Tours. And they're literally walking tours about toilets in London. And it's a fascinating way to learn about London is through its, history of hygiene and sanitation. So I'm really kind of big on this, and I'm starting to get my friends to do the same. So I'll sometimes get like phone messages or Instagram tags of friends who are visiting old houses being like, and look at this toilet. And I'm like, you've done it. It's the toilet tourism. Yes. So I'm like trying to spread that good word that there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. There's toilets all over the world that are worth seeing. And some of them are just like beautiful toilets. There's the toilet tourism concept actually started, I think it was either in New Zealand or Australia, but they've done the toilet tourism awards every year for the best public toilet that tourists can use and like the prettiest ones. So there's a couple in New Zealand, there's a couple in Norway and Sweden that they're just beautiful. And you can make beautiful toilets or toilets in beautiful places. And I think that's kind of lovely, and people look at me and they're like, why on earth are you doing this? And it's this thing. People do all kinds of weird things when they tour. Like I know people who, all they do when they go to be tourists is they go to look up like Disney related events, or they'll go to only learn about like Art Deco buildings, and that's like all they're focused on. Or maybe there's somebody who's like really, really focused on fashion. And I don't know why we don't think of toilets and sanitation the same way, because the history is there. It's fascinating. Here's some history stuff that I haven't mentioned on this podcast that like, whenever I tell people, they're always like, wait a minute, what? And I'm like, yeah, no one's talked about this stuff. And it's fascinating. And then I'll get these emails several years after I've told people this stuff of them telling me it's like their go-to cocktail party starter now, because this stuff is fascinating. We just don't talk about it. So
can you give an example of one of those stories?
Sure. I actually heard about this on Instagram, and it's true. Like I have the documents about it, but the lady did such a good job telling the story, so I'm gonna share it because it was quite brutal the way she shared it. So in the 1100s, there was this like warring group of lords, and they were having this fight, and then some guy decided, why don't we meet together and have some kind of truce? And they were going to go to this castle, and the castle had an old large cesspool underneath the castle that I guess people forgot about. It just like was there and people forgot it existed, or they didn't care. They didn't know about science back then so much. And these lords were coming to this castle, but to show off, they made everyone in their parties wear armor. So they were really like in this heavy armor stuff. And they're all walking to this whatever fortress or castle. And they all walked in, and the ground couldn't withstand the weight of of the metal. And they all drowned to death in cesspools because the floor gave way, and they all ended up in the cesspool drowning because the weight of the cesspool and the weight of their armor made them drown. Like, that's just wild.
And I mean, did that stop? So you said they were warlords, right? Did that stop the war? Did it stop them from?
I don't even know. To be honest, I just stopped there because I was just like, oh my God, lesson learned. Don't wear armor at home. Leave that outside. But it's, I mean, I would hope that the battle ended soon after that because there was no one else to fight it.
Because then the toilet basically saved a bunch of people from dying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. By making people die in like a weird twist of things. But yeah. Yeah, no, I see where you're going with that. But there's like so many other weird stories like that. Like, you know, there's like, I was saying recently, like in the 1880s, Melbourne was called Schmelbourne because it smelled so bad because their piping systems didn't work. And, you know, I know for a while in like the early 2000s, they were calling Toowoomba because they were trying to do recycled water and people didn't like the idea. But I think that to me reflects a lot about how we view toilets and how we view them in our society is, you know, calling towns names related to toilets to show our distaste for them. Or, you know, looking into history and seeing how people even, you know, talked about the slaves who had to clean out sewer systems in the Roman era. I mean, this stuff to me is just like fascinating. Or like the fact that they had octopi in Roman sewer systems who would go through the sewer systems to steal food in people's houses, but through the toilet holes, right? Like there's just all of this stuff. And I have so much of it in my head. And I just want everyone to learn it. So I can just be like, you know, the octopi in Roman toilets. And everyone's like, yeah, it'll be crazy. And they're like, yeah. And here I am. I'm the only one who's excited about it because I'm the only one who knows. And I'm just sitting here going like, do they know? Do they know? They probably don't. And there's so many other things like that I get so excited about that we can learn and we can do through tourism if only we talked about it more.
That's amazing. I mean, octopuses coming through the toilet. I mean, it's both gross, but also amazing. And it just shows, I mean, both how amazing the sewer systems are, but also the octopuses.
They're resilient. They're willing to get down whatever they need to get that meal, I guess. And they can like open jars and stuff. And they were just like, it was like an octopus highway, I guess, for some. Where they could just go sneakily get a bunch of random snacks and people thought that their toilets were possessed. So
oh, I love that. I'm gonna have to go. So you said that this is all on your website?
Yep. So Flush's website is www.flushwash.org, and there's an education portal that has some fun toilet history facts that you can learn about. We have a little timeline about the history of toilets. Our blog has a lot of this toilet tourism stuff on it and other things where we try to explain how septic tanks work, how sewer systems work for people who just want to understand better how their world works.
Perfect. I'm going to have a look through there probably very soon, actually. Was there any other methods of getting in touch with you if people did want to talk to you?
Sure. Always through you can always go through the website to get to me, but my email is kim@flushwash.org. I love talking toilets, so I love answering questions about toilets. If I'm taking a minute to respond, it might be because there's a lot of other people who ask me questions, but I love getting them. I love getting people's questions because to me, it just shows more and more our culture, our toilet culture in general. So it's fun for me.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for joining me today. I have learned a lot, surprisingly, about octopuses. Wasn't expecting that one. So thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
You've been listening to Room by Room, produced by the Home Organisation Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes like this from across 10 life management perspectives can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, and any other podcasting apps available on your smart devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating, sharing, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people to find it so we can grow and continue to bring you quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website, ho.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Gabriella Yaustra, and thanks for tuning in.